oral law was developed in the first part of the last millennium, roughly the years 100 to 500 of the Common Era. And so the oral law became the interpretations of the Torah. The Torah can be very cryptic. It gives us a law, but it doesn't necessarily say how to follow the law. For instance, the law of remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. The oral law gave us how to remember the Sabbath day.
Okay.
And that oral law became known as the Mishnah.
So that's the Mishnah. Okay. Oral law became known as the Mishnah. Now it said here it got codified into different topics.
Yes, it got codified into different sections. There were 6 different sections of the Mishnah. And then that was the laws and the regulations. What became then was, now that we had an interpretation of the Torah, now we needed an interpretation of the Mishnah.
And that
because
is?
Everything becomes a little bit more clear. So the interpretation of the Mishnah was called the Gemara.
Gemara.
And the Mishnah and the Gemara together make the Talmud.
Okay. So the Talmud is comprised of those two. Gotcha. Now, explain to us the Talmud then, Dan, because apparently there were 2 Talmuds, Palestinian and Babylonian.
Actually, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem. The Babylonian Talmud during the time when the temple was destroyed, especially in between the time when the first temple was destroyed and the second temple was destroyed, included the Babylonian exile. And that was a time when rabbis developed their discussions. The Babylonian Talmud became the more accepted version. The Jerusalem Talmud was developed by those who remained in that area, in Israel proper. And they have very similar sections with some minor differences. The reason why they would be similar is because they weren't written down for a long time. That they was all oral, and it was almost like you could imagine the game of telephone. People told stories and then told stories and then told stories. At one point, it was assumed that it should always remain oral, because the very act of engaging people in teaching, of explaining to somebody what this law is, was what kept it alive. Then around the year 200 in the Common Era, a rabbi named Judah Hanassi basically said, if we don't write this down sometime, it will be lost. And so that's when it started to become written. It's still referred to as the oral tradition, even though now it's written down.
And that is in the
That
Talmud?
is the body of the Talmud.
Okay.